Now he's going to have to go up against Shaxy, and Shaxy is actually playing for ahq Esports Club, where it looks like we're ready to hop right into the first match. So it's going to be Shaxy playing his kind of unique tempomage versus Gogongsing on that discard warlock. Sato, what do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this is a matchup that we saw played out last week in a game with a much-discussed turn with a Soulfire and a Doomguard, but it really does come down to explosive starts from the Tempo Mage. It's all about board control, and Zoo is able to wrestle back board control at various points in the game, whereas Tempo Mage has to do it from turn one. They have to keep it more or less forever, because it's really hard to swing. The only card in your deck that really does that effectively is Flame Waker, and you have to pair it with other stuff. So Shaxy will be looking for a very explosive start here, trying to follow that up and just push damage as early as he possibly can.
Yeah, comparatively, Gogongsing has one of the more awkward starts for Zoo I can imagine you have here, you know, missing out on kind of that signature one drop, something like a Flame Imp, something to get the board settled in your favor. Has a Peddler he can coin out, but more importantly, Silverware Golem, Soulfire, and Doomguard in the opening hand.
Yeah, not a pretty combination whatsoever. There's a chance if it gets particularly desperate that he can just go for the Miracle Soulfire into Silverware Golem play. It's something that you can do with this deck. If you feel like you need to throw out a Hail Mary, you can with a hand like this sometimes. But the Dark Peddler and now the Councilman being picked up gives him some sort of security with his early game curve at least.
All right, well, we see in Shaxy's hand, he has Barnes, and I want to take a minute real quick while we're kind of exchanging the early blows of this matchup to talk about this specific Tempo Mage deck, because, you know, we have the list pulled up in front of us. Barnes is in it, which, you know, is starting to see more inclusions. Obviously, Racy's list, which has been extremely popular, also featuring that, but this deck tops out at Thorsan, one Kabbalist Tome, there's no Antonidas, there's no Yogg.
Yeah. There is a little sprinkling of everything in this deck. There is a single Babbling Book, a single Acolyte of Pain, a single Kabbalist Tome, but apart from that, it's similar in makeup to the old Hot Form style deck, which is just put a bunch of burn in your deck with the Forgotten Torches and the Frostbolts, etc. that you have in there anyway, and then just try and cycle hard and dig it all out. But it's the interesting inclusions of all the one-offs that are intriguing to me. It looks like he's trying to hedge his bets against a few different things, and often that works against you, is just because what happens is your deck becomes slightly more inconsistent with all these things that you're trying to do at the same time.
Yeah, so seeing the Imp Gang Boss come down, though, and that is a minion that can be very problematic for Tempo Mage, based on my experience. That 4 health stat line makes it difficult to deal with, and Shaxy's just going to go ahead and jam down Barnes. There are a lot of things he could get that'd be extremely good, and Flame Waker, it is one of them, but maybe not necessarily at the moment, as he has no other spells that he can be using just this second. Will force a clear, though. That has to go away.
It does, yeah, but it wasn't what he was looking for. That can be one of the best outcomes from Barnes in a later turn when you have some mana available to you, but right there he was looking for Acolyte of Pain, Loot Hoarder, Blood Mage Thanos, that kind of thing, something with immediate value on the board, and here you go. Gogongsing is going to go for a power turn here. The Doomguard is the worst outcome. The polarizing difference between the Silverware Golem and the Doomguard there was so huge. 2 middle-of-the-road outcomes on the right-hand side of his hand.
That said,
he's in a great position.
He's still in a great position.
Yeah.
I think that was one of those things where you're kind of so far ahead in that particular moment where you're like, if I get the right thing here, I win.
Yeah,
pretty much.
That's the flip side of the point I made early on, which is sometimes you feel like you need to throw out the Hail Mary. Yeah. Sometimes the worst outcome is still fine for you, so why not take the risk? And that was definitely in the latter category.
I mean, you definitely don't need a 5/7 with charge. It's just not a big loss.
I mean, if you're in a strong enough position where you know what, this 5-mana 5/7 with charge, this is surplus to requirements right now. If you're in that strong of a position, you're probably doing okay in the matchup no matter what happens.
Yeah, another good roll off the Barnes would have been that Emperor Thorsan with the hand he has.
Right.
Filled with spells, but he's going to go ahead and put down a pretty reasonable board here, start freezing up the Darkshire Councilman. Just got to look to take that out basically over 2 turns probably. Yeah. As opposed to committing that second Frostbolt. Can get rid of the Imp Gang Boss here with the beat behind.
With that in mind, he may have been considering just pinging on the Darkshire Councilman that turn, just so he wouldn't have to commit anything to dealing with it next turn. But since he is completely removing the Imp Gang Boss, or essentially removing the Imp Gang Boss and the new Imp is remaining, but the old Imp is taken away, it's unlikely that both of his minions get traded out, so he feels like he'll have a way to deal with the Councilman next turn. One thing that he potentially didn't factor into that was Knife Juggler, though, but if Knife Juggler's not going to cooperate and just send knives to face, that's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, but the Tempo Mage kind of needs to have a really demanding start in the beginning to kind of force Zhu to start answering questions, because right now Gogongsing just keeps playing these value minions, keep playing these things that is going to force Shexy to pretty much commit all of his spells into just dealing with the board, and the problem is that he never actually gets control of the board.
Yeah, and that is essential. You just really do need to grip that control. The counterspell coming down from the Babbling Book, we didn't really talk about that outcome, but counterspell pretty darn weak against Zhu. It's not a deck that's packed full of spells. They're generally, you know, upwards towards 28 minions some of the time. So counterspell, a little bit useless in this situation, but there's some value in at least bluffing to your opponent that it's something else. Gogongsing says, you know what, if that's Mirror Entity, that's just fine. I'm still getting my Doomguard and a Silverware Golem on the board. Doesn't respect it, gets rewarded for the risk.
I was going to say, you know what else has value? Getting a free Silverware Golem with your 5-mana 5/7 with charge. I mean, that's just a deal.
It is a mighty fine deal. On top of that, you get to look at the glorious animation of Silverware Golem pulling himself together out of various forms of cutlery, which is a beautiful sight unless it's happening to you, in which case you hope it will go away immediately.
Yeah, not something you ever like to see. I can tell you, I've had a bunch of games, you know, in ranked play where that happens, where the Doomguard comes out. I'm like, no Silverware, no, and then you start seeing the Silverware come together. You're like, no.
Yeah, it's a terrifying feeling for sure. This deck is, you know, not as highly regarded as it was for maybe the first day or two after you know, the expansion came out and Silverware Golem, etc. The discard mechanics came out, but still considered powerful enough for some people to bring it to this tournament, and it's definitely doing work here, although it has queued into a pretty favorable matchup.
Yeah, that kind of an interesting discussion point. So obviously we had the patch with the balance changes fairly recently.
Yeah.
Abusive Sergeant, you know, takes a, you know, despite being one stat difference, it's a fairly sizable nerf.
Right.
And a lot of people are looking, you know, Abusive Sergeant is most commonly seen in Zoo variants. You know, whether it's the board flood Zoo, whether it's this discard version of Zoo. You know, people are saying, like, can you still bring this to tournament? And we are still seeing it pop up. Obviously, Zoo has kind of fallen off as being one of those core decks in this format, but, you know, still making appearances.
Yeah, Zoo, Abusive Sergeant was kind of the sleeper best card in the deck for a long time. You know, things like Doomguard and Soulfire and Power Overwhelming. You know, these are the flashy frontmen and the guitarists of the Zoo band. They're getting all the attention. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, you know, Abusive Sergeant was the drummer, unappreciated, keeping time, keeping perfect tempo, and not getting the love he deserves. So that card taking a hit is a big hit to Zoo. But more so, the reintroduction of Freeze Mage is a big hit to Zoo, because since Aggro Shaman went away and got replaced by Midrange Shaman, the Freeze Mages all came out of the woodwork, and now the Zoos are cowering in fear, because you just cannot win that matchup as Zoo.
Yeah, I like to think the Freeze Mage just kind of peeked out from behind a rock. It's like, is it safe to come out now? Or
yeah.
Rockbiter, go away?
Yeah, that is the existence of a Freeze Mage player. You're just patiently biding your time. Like, is it safe to play Ice Block? Yeah, can I do this? Does this strategy work now?
Well, looking in on what's going on, things for Shexy have not improved. He does have the opportunity to play down the Flame Waker, but, you know, what else? You have no mana left for the spell, and this board is looking mighty out of hand.
Yeah, and the secret in play still that counterspell that just hasn't represented any value yet. He did cast the Tome looking for some board stall, you know, at worst Frost Nova, at best Flame Strike, that kind of thing. Didn't get anything of the sort, so he's just going to take a stalling turn this turn to try and reduce some damage. And then if he takes care of this 3/3, there's actually a lot of low health available on the board, which with Flame Waker, double Arcane Missiles, Arcane Intellect to pull into some other spells as well on the following turn, he might be able to put something together here. I did say that Flame Waker is the card that you can swing the board back with. This is a huge ask even for the Flame Waker, though.
Yeah, Flame Waker's going to have to put in overtime if he wants to clear up this board. We're going to see what Shexy chooses to do basically on his last turn, is despite the fact that this may look like, you know, common to see a secret for Freeze Mage. Ooh, that is a game changer, however.
It is. It looks like he is going to go ahead and drop it down first, and now he has to think about his sequencing. The nice thing here is that Gogongsing filled his board, which is a decision on his part. He didn't have to play an extra 1/3 here. It's a very minimal piece of value on the board, and it does fill proceedings so that the Imp Gang boss could potentially not spawn extras, but now there is free space for it. But most importantly, Shexy picked up some more cheap spells in the form of Roaring Torch and Arcane Blast that he can fire off here. So after this torch, he has 3 0-mana spells that can be cast to try and clean up this mess.
This is a thing of beauty right here. I love watching this turn. It's awesome to see Shexy get the opportunity to do this. Let's see where this Arcane Blast has to go into the Imp Gang boss here. We'll see where these missiles hit, but statistically, he looks pretty favored to actually just clear this board straight away.
Yeah, now he does. I'm a little bit concerned about his sequencing there. He ended up Arcane Blasting the Imp Gang boss. If he was going to do that, he definitely should have put that earlier in his sequence to try and prevent any additional imps being spawned. But it all worked out fine for him with the amount of missiles he was firing. He was in good shape to be able to clear the board there, and there is just no way back onto the board. That is the swing that Shaxy needed, and now all of his cards look so much more appealing. Going to try and clear out this Flame Imp without having to trade into it. Gets his wish. Fireball is going to go to face. This one is all but over.
That's how quickly your luck can change against a Tempo Mage. Just suddenly comes